I always remember the first night of a long trip. You've made it through the chaos of travel and you've arrived at your first destination. You're tired, but your brain is taking in everything. You've escaped. The things you swept back home don't exist here. You just have all of this time ahead of you, and you don't know what to expect. We will return here, I promise. But let's head back to Los Angeles for a little context. My t-shirt game has been lacking, so I just went and bought some t-shirts. I have to pack tonight, so I need to get that shit together. So yeah, the plan is land in Dubrovnik tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Spend a few days there, leave Saturday and go to Montenegro, meet my friends, maybe spend a week in Montenegro, and then find a way over to Bari, Italy, and then, yeah, go around Puglia and see what I can see.
Well, it's funny because the thing he was doing like 4 years ago, and he stopped because he said, man, it just takes so long. And then he called me the other day, said, man, you know, AI is just incredible, man. He said, stuff that took me a month to do takes me 20 minutes.
Yeah.
He said, man. So he started it back again because he said, now it's way easier. AI does everything for him, he said.
Do you mess around with it at all?
Nope.
A friend asked me, why Dubrovnik? Post Game of Thrones, Dubrovnik has a reputation for being very touristy, and I'm always curious as to what I can make in those environments. Also, I'll be meeting friends in Montenegro in a few days, and Dubrovnik is only a few hours away from Budva by bus. Aside from this flight and my flight back home, I want this trip to be buses, trains, and boats. Slow travel. Here we go. This is my 4th year in a row taking a month off to travel and make work abroad. Year 1 was Copenhagen, Berlin, Athens, and Lisbon. Year 2, again I started in Copenhagen and then traveled to Italy, Venice, Florence, Cortona, Rome, Bologna. Last year I started in Berlin and went to Budapest, Prague, Montenegro, Visegrad, and ended up in Belgrade. As we keep sliding into a more artificial world, travel remains real. As corporations and their algorithms try and plan everything for us, I embrace the unknown of a one-way ticket. I'm not going to focus on gear in this video, but for this trip I packed my Fuji GFX 102, my X106, and just before I left I picked up a Ricoh GR3, which I shot this on. A few more from the Ricoh. I've made it to Sarajevo. Not Sarajevo. I'm in Croatia. I thought I was going to Sarajevo, but I'm not going to Sarajevo. I'm in Croatia. Dubrovnik. Yes, we got the gondola going up right behind me. Can we see that? I don't even know if you can see that. All right, I gotta get my shit together. We gotta go down there and take a look and take some pictures, but I'm gonna have you right there with me. Shooting out in the world is a muscle that atrophies quickly, at least for me. There are at least a day's worth of easy pictures I have to take before I start pushing myself out of my comfort zone. I opted to stay on the hillside overlooking Old Town, as opposed to down in the thick of things. The view, as you've seen, is spectacular. The trade was a bunch of hill climbing, which I was warned about in the reviews, but it was well worth it. I take thousands of pictures on these trips and only love a few. It comes from somewhere subconscious. The camera in my hands, fingers on the shutter, usually pressed into my chest, and I just walk. And I look and I stop and I take it in and walk more, forget where I am, doubt what I'm doing, doubt why I'm doing it, see a shadow on a face and forget everything because I'm lost in a scene. So much of my existence back in the States feels internal, and these first few days I feel myself fighting that mindset, pushing to be external. It's like how a starfish pushes their entire stomach out to eat. I feel like I'm pushing my mind out in the world to see. And eventually I start to see. And here we are, as promised, back to night one, a precipice, infinite realities stretching out from this one moment. Alright, first full day here. Went down to the city yesterday and it is crazy. Like, it is very touristy. But yeah, it's early. I'm gonna go try and take some pictures before everyone's out. As morning progressed and people started filtering through the gates, I decided to take a walk outside of Old Town to a neighborhood called La Pad. I stopped for an espresso, trying to get a sense of what I was really seeing. Nothing much was standing out. Sometimes a long walk pays off, and sometimes it's better just to stay put. It can be good just to walk, no agenda, let your mind drift a little. The first few days always feel stiff, but then things start to flow and exploring becomes my rhythm. So I hopped in an Uber and headed back to Old Town. As I headed back into Old Town, the light had moved and everything looked better. I had also stopped worrying about covering ground and slowed down a bit. It's always a push and pull between wanting to explore as much as possible and wanting to sit in one place and let things unfold around you. Midday was turning into late afternoon, and I was a bit exhausted and no one direction was calling me. And then I remembered the walls. You're supposed to walk the walls in Dubrovnik, so I headed off. The walls around Dubrovnik were built about 700 years ago to protect the old city. They stretch on for about 1.25 miles, wrapping around the town with towers and forts that once kept out invaders. Now they're just part of the scenery, still standing strong after all this time. As the sun was getting low on the horizon, I was finishing up my time on the walls. I sat down on one of the ledges just to take it all in, appreciate where I was and what I was doing, and that I have the means to do it. I felt grateful. I grabbed a sandwich and a Coke and I headed back up to my place for the sunset. I fell asleep with the doors of the balcony open to get some cool night air and awoke to this. I'm going to leave it here for a second. Oh, not gonna lie, did not sleep great last night. It is hard to shoot and film yourself shooting and like have the camera running when you take the picture so you can do the thing where you hit the shutter and it flashes to the picture. But this is going to be my last day in Dubrovnik, and then tomorrow morning I'm going to get a bus to Budva, Montenegro. I don't know. But it's gorgeous here. I felt a little lost my second day. I was up so early the day before and covered a ton of ground. I definitely was feeling some lag as well. At a loss as where I should head, I remembered my favorite shot from the day before. Guy jumping off cliff staring up at camera. So I decided to head that direction. The location was called Busa Bar. It was an outdoor cafe outside the city walls right on the water. Divers vaulting off of rocks into the clear Adriatic. Spectators watching on. Sun, skin, and sea. There's something sacred about places where people meet the water, and it was a theme that kept resurfacing through my trip. I woke up tired and unsure as to how my second day in Dubrovnik would pan out. There's always highs and lows, and if I keep myself out in the field, even when I'm not feeling it, eventually that low swings into a high and I start seeing everything. And just like that, my last day in Dubrovnik was over. Tomorrow I would set off on the next leg of my trip. After a slight altercation with a grumpy English girl, who I'm sure will go on to have a long and miserable life, I was on the bus and on my way to Budva, Montenegro, and we'll pick it up right here in the next episode.